Welcome back to the Dynasty Rewind YouTube channel. My name is Bob Van, and today I'm joined by Mike Bauer. We are going to be talking some players that are bound to bounce back in 2021 fantasy football. Let's go. So, like I said, we are back to discuss some bounce back players for 2021 fantasy football. Basically, players that underperformed last year to some capacity, didn't live up to the hype. Whatever the case is, maybe they were in a new situation. Whatever the case is, time to dive into these guys. Mike, give me your first bounce back player that you feel confident in going into 2021.
Sure, and that's Carson Wentz. He's been talked about a lot. Um, Problematic front office in Philadelphia. They failed him. They're going to fail Jalen Hurts until Harry Roseman leaves. I've waxed on about that enough. Reunited with Frank Reich, great offensive line, uh, decent wide receivers out there as well. Tight end room has some question marks. But Jonathan Taylor, good defense. Bob could speak more about defense than I
Yep.
could, but they got Darius Leonard, so they got a good defense. They drafted
Yep.
Quinn in the first round. I like a lot of their offseason moves, and I feel it for him. Obviously, I hope he does well. I've been an Eagles fan my whole life, and I've always been a Wentz fan.
My feelings on Wentz is that you nailed it with Philly. They just didn't give him the tools that he needs. I don't think he's a world beater. He's somebody who needs pieces around him. And you look at Philly, they didn't have wide receivers. Well, what do they go do? He goes in, now he has wide receivers. Didn't have an offensive line. Now he has one of the best offensive lines in the league. Didn't really have a defense last year. Now he has one of the best defenses in the league. Going from basically a complete polar opposite 180 from every situation he had. The running back room was fine. Miles Sanders isn't Jonathan Taylor by any stretch,
No.
but even that's an upgrade. And then you have, Naheem Hines, who's another kind of gadgety player who we both love. You just look at Carson Wentz from last year, and where you can get him now in drafts is kind of crazy. I think he has top 10 potential as a quarterback. I don't think he's going to, he's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to throw 50 touchdowns, but he's a guy who you can get. He's being drafted as QB 22 in best ball right now, drafted in the middle of the 13th round. In according to fantasy data, he drafted as QB 17, late 10th round. To me, I think he can do a heck of a lot better than that. So for me, I think he's a good value late. He's somebody who you can grab and honestly rely on as a QB1 in a one quarterback league, at least at minimum for me. Talking about Carson Wentz, another guy for me who I think is bound to bounce back, playing with the best quarterback he's had in probably 2 years since Andrew Luck, and that's T.Y. Hilton. Another guy who pretty much being forgotten about in drafts. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 44 and the wide receiver 63 in best ball, all the way in the 11th round. Go get this guy, man. He's basically free. He can be drafted as your wide receiver 4 or 5 at the earliest, probably usually the wide receiver 6. These guys are already hitting it off. I watched the Pat McAfee show, and he's had Ty on several times. Pat McAfee, former Colt, former teammate of Ty. They love each other. They've thrown together 3 or 4 or 5 times now, and they text every day. They talk about the playbook. They're gelled. And the reason why Ty just didn't perform last year, in my opinion, was Philip Rivers just isn't who he was. If Philip Rivers had gone there 5 years ago and played with Ty, maybe a different story. But I just see that, and Ty is looking to bounce back after multiple kind of down years. So it's maybe a little bit more of a stretch, but that's baked into his ADP where you can basically get this guy for damn near nothing. I got him for a 5th round pick in Dynasty. And I'm like, I have a free wide receiver basically. I have a starting caliber wide receiver. He's a wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 1 on a team that you can get, in redraft. You can get him in the 9th round or the 11th round, somewhere in that range. So for me, it's a pretty smash hit. For Ty, did you have any thoughts on Ty at all? What do you think?
I'm in consensus with you on that, and I like that you grabbed him for a 5th round pick. I mean, that's fantastic value. I actually have a wide receiver as well, and I hate to have a bounce back because of injury, but Cortland Sutton seems to be forgotten about. Yeah, everyone's talking about Jerry Jeudy. They're talking about Noah Fant. One of my strategies is always go out there and look at IR, look at guys on taxi squad that you want to trade for. Cortland Sutton's going to be the wide receiver 1 there. It's simple because he was. Cortland Sutton, to me, is a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, Andre Johnson, and I'm not saying he's as good as them. What I'm saying is he is quarterback proof. No matter who he's at back there, Brandon Allen, Joe Flacco, Drew Lock, he's put up good numbers. He's quarterback proof. He is fantastic. go get yourself some Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, no, I don't hate that one bit. I've never been a huge Cortland Sutton fan, and that's just kind of I'm not a huge fan of his like that archetype of player where he's kind of like Kenny Galladay in that he's more of that deep ball kind of grab guy. He doesn't do a lot of the, short reliable work that I like to see personally. But I don't mind it. The value you're getting him at now, you're drafting him after Jerry Jeudy a lot, or
Yeah.
a little before. They're very close in ADP. So I don't hate that pick at all. Not a guy I mind picking up anytime I can. Another guy I'm going to look into, Chris Godwin, one of my favorite wide receivers since he broke out a couple years back. When he broke out, for a long time in the season, he was a wide receiver one. I think he ended up finishing top 5 that year that he broke out. Last year he was expected to take another step forward with Tom Brady. A lot of people were actually kind of in a mixed consensus of who Tom Brady was going to hurt more between Mike Evans and Godwin. A lot of people were like, oh, Mike Evans should be cut. And then you had, the crowd of that Godwin was actually going to be the one that was hurt. And they both ended up doing really well in games that they were healthy. The big downfall to Godwin was just that he was kind of banged up all year. He didn't get to be in the Tom Brady locker room on the field catching reps a lot. He got injured in like week 3 or 4. I think he got injured pretty early on in the season. And that just kind of lingered on until damn near the end of the season. I think he had his best week 17, which is helpful to no one unless you're playing this year where your playoff week is going to be week 17. But last year, nobody was playing. Well, not a lot of people were playing week 17. Another guy you can get at a reasonable value, I'd say. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 18. I think he's damn near guaranteed to finish above that. Last year, overall, he finished as a wide receiver 30, but points per game basis, which is how you should look at things, he finished as a wide receiver 13. So I think at worst, he's guaranteed to beat that. Going for a mid-third, late third, early fourth, depending on what league style you're in. But he's a guy I think you can grab and smash, and he can be I'd honestly say he can probably be your wide receiver 1 in most cases, but you can probably draft him as your wide receiver 2, which is even better. So any qualms or issues with Chris Godwin?
No, I like Chris Godwin. It's just one of those things. The only thing long term is you worry about, was he going to be there? You hope he doesn't.
Sure.
You hope he leaves because he goes somewhere hopefully with a younger quarterback, right?
Green Bay,
Well, Green Bay will have a much younger quarterback soon.
maybe. Please don't.
No, I like Godwin. I'll tell you who I also like. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking more about it, Raheem Moestert was a guy that I had down here. So 2 years ago, broke out pretty big, which is fantastic considering, 27 years old to finally break out. That's what he was. But so 2 years ago, he ran 137 times for 772 yards and 8 touchdowns. Kind of came out of nowhere. This just shows how fantastic the Kyle Shanahan system is. Last year, Mostert ran 104 times for 521 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think he's going to start the season as the incumbent running back 1. I'm not as high on Trey Sermon as other people are. Elijah Mitchell's there. Jeff Wilson Jr. is there. You like Trey Sermon? That's fine. You can be wrong about something too. So I know that they have a JaMychal Hasty, Tasty McHasty still there, but I think Mostert, it's his job to lose.
You bring up a good point that it is his job to lose. That's unfortunate because I like Trey Sermon personally. I think he's a great Nate throughout the comp, Chris Carson for him. But with Mostert, my issue has always been the durability. Last year it was, I'm packing on weight so I can take all these hits, and then he gets injured early. Like he didn't make it through much of the season, and I was fine with it. I had Jerick McKinnon going off, most of the year. But no,
He won
my
games, man.
my big issue is just that injury bug and now he's 2 years older. He's 29 now, right?
I think he'll turn 29 in the season.
Okay. So, he's getting older. Granted, there's not a lot of wear on the tires in terms of, he hasn't really played all that much. He's been a backup or a special teamer his whole career almost until 2 years ago. So I don't know. It's a guy who I think the risk is baked into his ADP. It's kind of baked into his trade value, especially them drafting Trey Sermon. I think put a lot of doubt into the Raheem Mostert's owners' minds, and that's why they're even louder about him now. For me personally, I'm not somebody who's buying in on Raheem Moestert. I'll draft him at a decent cost, but for me, that's like eighth, ninth round, which I think he's going around 6 or 7. I'm going to dive into Julio Jones. And this is somebody who I don't think I've ever rostered a single share of in any format, any league ever. I don't know why that is. There's just some players that I've just never had for whatever reason. Like either they go right before me when I was going to draft them, whatever the case is. But Julio Jones last year finished as the wide receiver 52. And a lot of this was he didn't play a lot of games. He missed like, I think 6 or 7 games. He played. The one nice thing I'll say about those games is like he was out for 4 of them. And the only 2 games he came in and started and then left like right away, which is like terrible for your fantasy team because you're just sitting there with zero point 0.2 points from his 1 reception. So not great, but the age I think is really starting to wear on people. If you look at Julio Jones, he's going into his 11th season. Out of those 11 or out of those 10 seasons he's completed, he's only been outside of the wide receiver 10 range twice in his career. And that was his rookie year and 1 year where he only played I think 11 games. So you look at this guy who up until and last year was the other time, sorry. So 3 times total. Still pretty dang good. You look at his points per game, he was still 12th. So it's still he still had a good year minus miss and those are factoring in those 2 games where he only played like 6 snaps and got a point. So those are factored into that points per game total, which he probably would have been a heck of a lot better. Finds himself in a new home, being drafted as a wide receiver 13 according to fantasy data, being drafted as a wide receiver 17 according to best ball. But you look at this guy, like I said, his career path, his career arc. We talked about it on the Patreon a little bit. The big concern in Tennessee is the low passing volume offense. Well, guess what? Too bad. It's a super efficient offense. A.J. Brown was wide receiver 10 last year. Corey Davis had the best year of his career last year, got himself paid up in New York, and they still had a 2,000-yard running back in the backfield. And Jonah Smith with 8 receiving touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. I don't see any reason that Julio Jones can't at least do what Corey Davis did last year and probably blossom and be at least around, that wide receiver 2 range most of the year. He's going to be a guy you can start. And the thing is, usually those games where he's missed, well beforehand that he's going to be out. So it's kind of one of those things. I'm banging the drum for Julio Jones, even though I've never rostered him, and I'm okay with that. And I still don't have any shares this year. Maybe I'll snag one in a best ball, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the Julio of old.
Oh
You know,
no.
AJ Brown is the wide receiver 1 there, but if I have Julio, I'm not going to hesitate to start him by any means, not at all. One guy I'm kind of hoping for a little bit of a bounce back here. I kind of struggled putting him on here because it's like, what does he really have to bounce back from? Because he never really broke out. But I just kind of want to talk about Sam Darnold a little bit. So just looking over his stats, and we all know he was seeing ghosts and he had mono and whatever, but he had Adam Gase as a head coach. And we know what happens when you get out of Adam Gase's crutches. I mean, his career win-loss 13 and 25, 45 touchdowns, 39 interceptions. His best season, he was 7 and 6 as a starter. He had 3,024 yards, 13 picks, and 19 touchdowns. But I really feel like the Matt Rule, Joe Brady duo in Carolina can fix him. And if he can bounce past his 2019 season, which is his best statistical season, yardage wise and win wise, of his career. He definitely has the tools. I mean, you got Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. You've got you've got DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel's gone, but Terrace Marshall comes in. Ian Thomas is still there. They did draft and his
Tommy
name
Tremble.
Tommy Tremble. Sorry, his name was slipping me there for a little bit. So there's a ton of talent there for Sam Darnold. And I mean, that system made Teddy Bridgewater look respectable as a starting quarterback. I'm hoping for a bounce back from Sam Darnold, or as my friends from True North call him, Darno.
No, I definitely agree with that sentiment. The second you started talking about, I don't know what this guy really is to bounce back to because he hasn't really broken out yet. But I think if there's anybody, similar to Wentz, where like they just didn't have it yet in New York, they just didn't have the offensive line wasn't quite there yet, the defense wasn't quite there yet. They didn't really have weapons. They never really, up until this year, had a really good wide receiver for Darnold to even throw to. I argue Robbie Anderson. I'm not huge on Robbie Anderson, so for me, what does it do when you don't have time to throw it, when you're not reading the field well, when you're not being trained to read the field well?
Crowder. They had Jamison Crowder who
He
put
played like 4 games.
yeah,
No,
but
he
Jamison
played more,
Crowder
but
2 years ago put up some monster stats. There were
that's
times
fair.
he was getting like 11 receptions a game.
But either which way, he goes to a team now who I think he needed this restart, this change of scenery, and I think there's no more reason than that he has a shot to be better, and bounce back and bounce forward even to be maybe at least actually see his potential and get trained up by, like you said, Joe Brady and Matt Rule. Unfortunately, I think Joe Brady leaves next year, which
I agree.
is super unfortunate. He was already getting offers this year. The second a more appealing job opens up, which there's always a handful. So that might be a little concerning what he does next year outside of that. But I think there's no reason he can't do well this year. He's being drafted super late. He's being drafted as QB 30. He's going undrafted in all formats, almost undrafted in best ball in about the 15th round, late 15th. So he's barely getting drafted. So, I mean, cheap to acquire, might have a harder time in Dynasty. People are real wish-washy on him. Like oddly enough, I traded away Carson Wentz for Sam Darnold and Brian Burns, like before Sam Darnold even got traded, which was super bold on my part.
Yeah.
But because it's like, oh, he might be a backup in New York. This would suck. I traded Carson Wentz, a really good starting quarterback, and super flex for a defensive lineman. Go me. AMA. Ask me anything. But I don't know. I'm not in on Sam Darnold. I have the one share that I traded for, but I do think the sun is rising on maybe a Sam Darnold comeback story, a bounce back story. That was a pretty good list of prospects or a good list of players to see
Yeah.
if you can't go acquire in your dynasty league. See if you can't go get these guys, for cheap in your redraft leagues. Other than that, that's it from us today. So please, if you did enjoy, hit that like button. Let us know how we did in the comments. Who's your favorite comeback, bounce back player of the year? If you did enjoy this video, please check out these other videos on our channel. And from me and Mike, we're out. Y'all have a good one.